right? Yeah, it's a good price up there. Unless you get a guy was trying to get a boat, you never give me like the right boat, not here to go. So we didn't go. They were like 6 months in my house.
Hey guys, let me take a second to introduce you to Carlos. He originally from Little Havana, Tampa. Grew up real close to his grandma, real close to his parents. Learned a lot just from humble beginnings to where he's at now. And on that, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about yourself and have a good time.
Well, welcome everybody. Super excited to be here. I always find it kind of special to be able to give back, to obviously the youth, having been there and really, I guess, benefited from it. I have a lot, to be thankful for my culinary instructor and the guidance that I had, but just the programs in general. There's times that I always think back to the competition days, training days, other directions in my path in my life I could have taken if I didn't have culinary, which would have been scary. So super thankful. Really, I'm honored to be in front of you guys. You get to do something every day that you love and you share it with others. And I think that as years and times have changed, the generations have changed and kind of what the expectations are of the food that's being cooked. And I consider myself part of the old guard, the old school, but trying to find, a lot of useful modern techniques that I can use in my culinary classical cooking methods. So today we're going to talk a little bit about versatility versus creativity. Okay. I think that a lot of times, chefs are always searching for that next dish, that next ingredient, plating style, whatever it is, the tool, and it's all about creativity. Everybody's always talking about how can I be more creative in what I'm doing. And I think that before we can look at creativity, I think we have to look at versatility. I'm a believer that you can't really do something that is advanced or modern if you don't have a solid foundation. So if you can't, saute, braise, shallow poach, pan fry, shallow fry, all the cooking techniques. If you can't do those cooking techniques, you really shouldn't be looking at anything modernist or anything at an advanced level of cooking. Because again, your ability to understand those techniques are what allow you to be creative. Okay, and versatility and being creative is something that we could probably interject that word. We could probably get away with, well, that's creative or that's versatile. For me, versatility is kind of where it's the box I like to play in. I like to look at something and kind of try to figure out and assess, what does everybody do with it? Great. What can I do? Right? Peeler. Right? I mean, most people, students, chefs, I'm like, hey, it's a peeler. What can you do? And you peel vegetables with it. But I've found ways to maybe slice vegetables into strips. Using a peeler in places that maybe didn't make any sense. Most people would peel mangoes with a knife, right? Cut the tops and bottom, you peel it around the edge. I used to peel it. I used to peel it on, things like butternut squash, things like that. But I also make strips out of that same butternut squash. So looking at our tool bags and things that we're always working with, we're just trying to find inspiration on how we can use them in a little bit different way. And that's the creative part, right? But if you don't know how to actually use the tool or actually do the technique, then there's no way the creative side is really going to be successful, right? At the end of the day, we all want to be successful. We want to make something that other people are really going to enjoy, right? We want to make people happy. I mean, that's why I do it. Cooking, that is. So we're going to actually, today we're going to play around with some very simple ingredients, and I want to talk about, again, their versatility. And maybe through a lot of the, what I show you and what I talk about, you'll see the creative side of it, okay? So the first thing is tacos, right? Tacos are incredibly popular. I mean, we've got one day of the week that's taco day. And, for me, tacos, I love tacos. I probably later on in life started to eat tacos. And when I got into the catering world, you know, there was a lot of need for comfort food, but one bite, right? Being in New York, everything's one bite. So it was very, very challenging to figure out, okay, how we're going to make a taco that's supposed to be, you know, kind of eaten, you know, so you don't get dripping on you. And what we did was, you know, we took the corn tortillas, either white corn, yellow corn, and made our own mini taco shells, you know, using some ring cutters. Now this morning, I will tell you, talk about being versatile, like I was telling the students, you know, one of those normal taco baskets for the fryer is like $70. You know, it comes with like 8 slots for large tacos. And that's what I used to use for the mini tacos. But we didn't have that. I wasn't spending $78 on 6 shells. So I challenged the students to let's figure something out. So a combination of, you know, some roasting racks, fryer basket, and a lot of patience. A lot of patience. We've kind of figured it out. Are they perfect? No. But I think that the learning process is what's really important, right? So we've made our little mini taco shells. So I took, you know, at the grocery store, you'll find a sirloin steak, right? It's a big old cut, probably 1.5 pounds. You can either use a sirloin steak, or I'd probably stay away from like a London broil. I'd stay more towards either the shoulder block area or the sirloin. And I wanted to prepare it in a couple different ways, right? Typically, these cuts are braised. So one thing that I really love playing around with is dried chilies and dried spices. So ancho is kind of my focus. I use a high combination of ancho chilies and guajillo chilies, and made a spice rub, right? Something I really love. Now, if you don't have time to make a spice rub, obviously, you know, VooDoo Red is something that I will always have. If I don't have time, I'll interject it anywhere I can. And if I want to bump that up, I can also add some dried chilies to that as well. So it's paprika if you want. Again, versatility, using something you're comfortable with and you know, and just changing it so that it's yours. So 2 types of anchovy today. One was braised, so I took the sirloin, I seasoned it. So seasoning is very important. I tend to, when it comes to proteins, I use a pretty standard recipe, which is 1% of the weight of the protein. So I typically work in grams. So if I have 500 grams of protein, I use 1% salt. And then depending on my spice mix, I'll use anywhere between 1% to about 0.7%. Okay? I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but when you're seasoning, you know, 800 pounds of sirloin, I promise you, as a chef, you're going to be like, yes. Because there's no guessing, right? You know that 1% is 1%, and it will work always, I promise. Go home and try it out. I use 1% on all my recipes. If I'm making purees in the pressure cooker, if I'm cooking beans or something like that, 1%. And it doesn't fail me. It's a really good value of salt that I found just really works. If you've got, you know, olives and anchovies and things like that, you know, back it up, you know, think about it. But for the most part, 1% really works. So 1% salt, I seared it in the pan, and it's not a traditional braise, okay? I cooked it in a pressure cooker, okay? Growing up, my grandmother always had a pressure cooker. She cooked all of our beans and all of our stews in it. I was terrified of it. You know, this thing on the stove, shaking away, and I think one time the lid actually was in the stove, in the roof. So I have an electric pressure cooker. You know, these days everybody's got an Instapot. You know, it's very popular. It's a great piece of equipment. So everything goes in my pressure cooker. And I think in your package you have some of these recipes. But so I've got my spice mix, my seasoned beef. Along with that, again, tacos, right? And I started thinking to myself, okay, what do I want in there flavor-wise? I charred some tomatoes, some onions. If you want to throw some more peppers in there, maybe some red peppers or some green peppers if you'd like. Garlic also gets charred. Everything gets charred. Something that I do for thickness is tortillas. A friend of mine, we were doing this chili cook-off back in my culinary school, and I never made real competition chili before, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna win this. I didn't win, but I learned a valuable lesson about thickening chili. You know, it wasn't about the reduction. He's like, no, you got to put tortillas in it. I'm like, what? And it made total sense once we talked about it. So in a lot of the you know, dishes that I make that are maybe South American or Latin America, I use corn tortillas that are toasted in my sauce making. Because then I can go back and pull the big cut of meat out, curry that sauce, and it becomes a beautiful, balanced sauce for me. I don't have to pick it in, I don't have to do anything to it. And in most cases, obviously, it's still gluten-free, which, again, going back to the catering of, necessity. I need one bite, I need gluten-free, and, these days I need it plant-based, and, so it's versatile. You gotta be nimble. So now I've got my protein, and that's kind of the three different dishes that I'm going to show you today are kind of based on. Next is very, very simple things. I just think about what I like. What do I like in a taco? Or what do I like in a sandwich? And I've made some sauces based on that. So I'm going to show you. So one sauce, and again, it all makes sense. I basically tied 3 dishes together that all had the same ingredients. Because I think that at the end of the day, like, I love the, everybody says, well, yeah, but you spend so much money on your ingredients. Okay, fair enough. So I always want to show how you can do, we can both buy the same ingredients, how the versatility of it is in every facet. So it can be a catering opportunity for an hors d'oeuvre, it could be something that is a fast casual, or it can be something fine dining, right? So I'm starting with a taco, which in most cases, tacos are street food, right? How is taco going to end up fine dining? We're going to see. Hopefully we get there. But it's pushing yourself as a chef to take very, very simple ingredients, right? Simple cuisine, and elevating it. And that's where, for me, the creativity comes in, right? If you know how to make the food, then you can find a way to elevate it. You can't start with the food you want to make and try to elevate it if you're really not good at actually creating those flavors. Because what ends up happening is you have a beautiful looking dish, but it doesn't taste like anything, right? Or it's not well executed, right? That's I think most of us have experienced it. So peppers was a big focus for me. So in the spice mix, I've got dried anchos, I got guajillos in there. This is my habanero sauce. So it's it's got a kick to it. The recipes are in there as well. This is based on a peri-peri sauce that I've been working on for a totally different project. We were in Sarasota this weekend, and stopping by all these markets and stuff. And like Erik even said this morning, dude, those are big habaneros. They're massive. And I also got some. We used to call them Long Island red chilies up in New York, but they're basically about this long. Sometimes they have a little curve to them. They're incredibly spicy. So those are the 2 chilies I'm focusing on here, and everything was charred. Again, trying to get on the side of depth of flavor, right? So when we're eating a lot of these things, if it's one bite or an entire entree, you want as much depth of flavor as possible. You don't want to get blasted with heat and then it just dies on the end, right? You want your flavor to go up, heat, and maybe go up, go back down, and then up, okay? So there's different things going on. So that's one sauce. Next one is what I'm calling basically a charcoal sauce. So the exact same recipe that I use to braise the beef in its raw format, I use to make this sauce, okay? With the addition of some beer and some tequila. And then once I've cooked my sauce down, I use charcoal powder. So it's a food-grade charcoal powder. A lot of time we use it all the time. It's actually very good for you. Antioxidant, helps the liver function. There's a lot of doctors, digestive. But for me, I'm glad it's really good for you. But more importantly, it's the aesthetics of it. It's really pretty, right? It's really cool when you put that sauce down. It's very like, wow, that's cool. I've never seen that before. I think that when you can naturally color a food, it's cool. Using any kind of like food coloring additives and things like that, I would stay away from, especially the savory side. But there's plenty of things in terms of carrot peels, right? We just talked about it. Peeling carrots. We used to save all of our carrot peels, put them in the dehydrator, and make carrot powder. We use that carrot powder back in to make things, sauces orange. Okay. Same thing with tomato peels, right? We do oven-dried tomatoes all the time. All those peels got saved and dried. They got pulled back in our sauces. So I as chefs, you've only got so much money to spend on a dish that day. You've got to think about, how do I become versatile? How can I use everything there? Okay, it's not just about composting, or it's the famous, it's going to go into stock. That's great, but it's not going to make you any more money, right? There's only so much stock you're going to get out of that pot. You're just adding money to it, right? You got to charge more for that stock now, right? And then some of the typicals, right? So I've got some cheeses, some tomato, some cilantro, some cabbage, very, very humble, simple ingredients. Now, I'm not going to incorporate every single one of these things into every single one of my dishes. Yes, a taco, a one-bite taco is not going to need the same amount of components that an entree does. You can all agree there. So again, you've got to kind of make those decisions. And I think, speaking directly to the students in the back, like, don't add, subtract. Start with a very minimum amount of ingredients and see what you end up with. Then if you need something else, then add that something else, right? But try to have a level of focus, right? Do I have something that is creamy? Do I have something that is crunchy? Do I have colorful visual components, right? Do I have height? Do I need to add something that's going to give me an opportunity to lift that piece of beef up or that asparagus up, right? Think about these things as you're developing, especially early on. We want to look at all the cookbooks and Instagram and just create. It's not always very helpful when you're young because you don't know why you're doing it. So always ask, like, why am I putting this on the plate? What's the purpose of it? Okay. So, again, very simply, can you bring me the plate? So we were talking this morning about the taco fryer basket. Right? And I said, $70 for 20 tacos, it just doesn't make any sense. Same thing about taco holders, right? There's plenty of ways that you can buy taco holders. And they have plenty of them, stainless steel, wood, plastic. I've seen dinosaurs. Have you seen the dinosaur? Not for me, but hey, something right. And I said, early on, I tried, again, trying to be versatile. So I asked, do we have any dry beans, do we have any dry rice, something dry that would be a surface that my taco could sit on. And showing the students, that you don't have to spend a lot to be creative, right? It's, again, versatility. This one kind of, just coming up with something that could work, but, throwing your beans down and then, put your taco shells on top. Hey, this is not, somebody said, well, you can't eat the beans. I said, that's a great point. I said, but this is not an edible device, right? This is a serving device. This is something to present something else. So I wouldn't recommend this on an entree per se. If you were like, well, I need to have this potato standing straight up and I'm going to put some dry beans in the plate. I don't recommend that. But again, looking around your kitchen and saying, what can I do? What can I use to present the story or the message or the experience I'm trying to showcase? Another thing, could be using limes. Now, this one gets to be a little expensive, but utilizing a lime, again, very simply, just cutting a wedge out of the back of it, and then, placing your taco shell in there. Could also work too. And if we wanted to get into a debate, I can debate that the lime is now flavoring the outside of my taco and I don't have to serve a lime with it. But anyway, this works too. I've seen, we've done things where, it's like a little taco and a lime and a tequila shot next to it, or a little mini margarita next to it. Again, just going back to the catering side of things. So, I'm going to keep our lime. And again, I'm just using the plate just to merely kind of showcase. So something that, I'm a huge fan of induction. When I was in New York, we were off-premise caterer. Everything we did was off-premise. So I don't know, these days when I go to do a demo or cooking and they're like, you got no electricity or you got no gas or you're outside, I'm like, okay, cool. I need a tent, I need all these tables, and I need this, and I need a generator, because I'm so used to it that it doesn't scare me anymore. But, I will say that Coming from restaurants, and, Michelin-starred restaurants, and then going into catering, I think that catering really gave me a sense of being very versatile in an environment, right? Because you normally don't have any space, and you have to feed a lot of people. The food's got to be hot. I mean, so I used to tell my sous chefs, this isn't like service in a restaurant, right? You mess up a table before, you buy the table, right? No problem. We'll take care of the bill. How do you do that with a $50,000 to $60,000 to $70,000 event? Right? Big difference. So I always said, catering, like 1,000%, that's our batting average. It's got to be perfect every single event. Because we can't afford to make a mistake at such a big event. Food for thought. So, again, simply, this is not something that, you guys haven't done, seen. So I've got my anchovy beef. One of the things I was telling the students this morning is like, it's a one-bite item, So what we want to do is really get as much flavor into that one bite as humanly possible, right? Because when we start thinking about the other side of things, right, the administrative side of like food costs of things, the prices have skyrocketed on everything. And somebody tells me they only want one bite, I'm like, you got it, right? So I'm really saving. For 100 tacos, I probably need a little bit more meat in there. But going back to using grams, a lot of my recipes will gram everything out. So you know how much meat you need to send for those 100 portions. You're not oversending, you're not undersending. So everything is really calculated out because at the end of the day, we do this to make money. I mean, we all love doing this, don't get me wrong. But if somebody said, hey, do it for free, I don't know, some of us used to do it. But we've got to learn to live. And this is one way to do it, is being very, very smart in how you utilize the products that you have. Again, being very simple, this is just some onions with a little bit of, cilantro, cumin and salt, and lime juice. Again, thinking about all the things that I would like to add, to my taco, if I were having it in front of anyone, and that's basically it, right? And this is the premise behind what we're doing today, right? It's a very, very simple application, something that I feel you can share with your students, but by the end of the demo, you'll see how it becomes a little bit more complex. Any questions so far? Yes.
I just want to tell you, since you left the onion, cilantro, lime stuff at my house for my kid, she makes it every week. She makes that every week, and it's in the refrigerator. So thank you for that.
Stay hydrated. So the next thing I want to share with you. So I'm currently the corporate executive chef, so mouthful, for a company called EuroBake. And we are a bread manufacturing plant based in St. Pete. We're also an importer of pastry products. The brand name for the bread is EuroBake, and Schulstead is the pastry plant. And my sole job is to basically take our bread products and find ways to be versatile with it to sell it back to the chef community. So I get to spend a lot of time with chefs working on R&D or ideation for their menus. And showing kind of how our bread can work in their concepts. So for me, it's still being incredibly creative, but very versatile, because what do you do with a dinner roll? You serve it as table bread. But no, there are applications, and that's the cool part of my job, is just trying to find them. So one bread that I kind of want to focus on in this arena is the Tolera. So it's a fairly new product for us in the last couple of years. And Toleras are typically used to build tortas, right? Torta is very much a street food in Mexico, Oaxaca. So loving that and having had an amazing torta before, I wanted to recreate that, but kind of my own spin on it. I'm always trying to figure out how would I do it if it were my food? So the bread itself is what we call web slice. It means a slice on both sides. And you'll see we have a bunch of them baked off for you guys to use care to want to use it later on. But the cool thing is that if you know anything about bread, anytime you have bread that's baked on a hard surface, meaning like a deck, okay, on a very flat stone surface, it gives you a lot of stability and structure, right? And if you've ever been out and had a burger and the bottom of the bun just goes straight through, that's not baked on a hard surface, it's baked in a pan, right? A lot of these burger buns that are perfectly round, you got a little white ring around it, it's in a pan. Well, we don't have pans, this is just not the type of the bread that we make, so everything goes on a hard surface. So a lot of times you'll eat our product and, delicious, but it holds up. It really holds up to moist builds, sandwich builds. So I baked this off earlier this morning, literally 2 to 3 minutes at like 400, just to give it a little bit of crispy on the outside. And I'll just show you, it's probably an hour or two ago, but if you want to pass it around just so you can see what I'm talking about, how soft it is on the outside, or soft on the inside, and you've got that crisp on the outside that you can refinish if you'd like to. Okay, so on the inside, basically took a little bit of sour cream with some cumin and a little lime juice. And that's going to go down.
Yeah.
Next, I'm going to use the habanero sauce. So again, this has got a kick to it. It's not going to blow your head off, but you're going to notice that it's habanero. So what I like to do is just the center, and only on one side, because it can be overpowering if you use too much of it. Alright, so next, add a little bit of cabbage. You can easily use iceberg lettuce. I like the texture of cabbage, especially on a hot sandwich. A lot of times if you have, braised brisket, pulled pork, and you put, any kind of soft lettuce, it just gets even softer. So cabbage really holds up really well. Because I have so much flavor between the beef and, my hot sauce and my cumin, I don't season this at all, okay? Normally I season every layer of it, but this won't need it, okay? And cook my cabbage down, fairly simple. Some of my onions. Now the beef. So something that, I'm a huge fan of the larger sandwich builds, but a lot of times it's very difficult to eat, and you really can't take it down in one bite. You end up having it in pieces, so I try to, think about that eating experience and try to minimize how much I'm putting on the sandwich itself. And also think about it, it's going to cost you more money the more protein you put on that sandwich. And then the last thing, which is really cool, that I've never seen it before, which I'd seen string cheese before, but I've never seen the string cheese they make in Morocco. It's wild. When you get a torta there, it's very, very big. And the string cheese, it's just like really long, beautiful strands. They just put a big pile of it on top. It's like, for me, that was the best part of the whole eating experience. Something you've never seen before. So we tried to recreate that. Obviously, this is not that. And a little bit of cilantro. Again, super simple sandwich, and food does not have to be complicated for it to be delicious.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I think that's what we're trying to produce and teach, right? You know, for us, we're looking at it, it's like, well, okay, cool. It's a sandwich. I've built many sandwiches in my life. But at the end of the day, people that we're educating have no clue. They maybe have never seen a torta in their life. Or, chef, why did you put the cabbage down first? Why not put the cabbage on top? How was the meat the last thing, right? These questions that for us are incredibly common aren't common sense, right? Because some people just don't know. Cabbage is there to help with the moisture from the beef, right? I told you, this bun is pretty bulletproof, but maybe you don't have access to our buns. You can't buy it at home. You buy something else, you put that beef down first, all that juice goes right into the bottom of the bun, and it will break through. So this is, again, building a safety net. So just keeping that in mind. So this is the torta, the HO beef torta. Now the last one, when we get there, kind of talking about plating a little bit. You know, when it comes to plating entrees, there's so many questions that I need to have answered first before we get into how we're going to plate it, meaning how many people we're serving, who's on the line, who's it for, what's the theme, where are we? I mean, there's so many things before I get there. You know, a lot of times I would show up to an event and maybe we were plating that dish exactly the same way we've always plated it, but maybe today we're only doing it for 15 people, and I want to do something different. You know, something a little more intimate, something a little more dramatic. I have a different team. So, sidebar note. Going back to the beginning when I was talking about kind of modern cooking, a little bit of using not only cooking techniques but products. There's a lot of powders, and I don't want to call them chemicals because a lot of them come from seaweed extracts that give us a lot of abilities. Okay, and one, if you just when you leave here, one that I recommend you go and find and use, it's called an Ultrasperse. Before Ultrasperse, there was Ultratex 1 through like 30. And what it is a modified starch. So the same way we use cornstarch in a slurry to thicken things, it's the same premise, right? It's a starch that needs to be hydrated, right? And then it needs to be set, right? So everything's a little different. If I add a cornstarch slurry to my sauce and I whisk it in, and I don't boil it, it doesn't set, it doesn't activate, right? It doesn't hydrate. Ultrasperse is very simple because it doesn't need to be hot and it doesn't need to be cold. So it works really well. If I'm making passion fruit, sauce as a filling for a tart, and I'm like, oof, I added too much juice, right? I think I'm in the R&D stages. I can add a little bit of Ultrasperse to kind of thicken it back up. It's indestructible. You can boil it, cool it, heat it, freeze it, boil it again. It won't break down on you. So it's called Ultrasperse. So Ultrasperse is what I use in my sauces. Okay, if you look, all these sauces that are heavy with pepper and onions and things, they have a lot of excess moisture that isn't reduced while cooking, right? Because you're cooking a whole vegetable or a piece of the vegetable. When you puree it, you've released all the excess moisture that's been trapped inside that vegetable. So the Ultrasperse helps capture that, right? If you put too much Ultrasperse, you'll know right away because it'll look like roux. It'll stiffen up. Just add liquid. It needs water, right? Same thing with the hot sauce. This hot sauce, if you make it and you don't add Ultrasperse, will split, right? You'll have a water line, kind of like undercooked tomato sauce. Do you need it? No. You don't need it. It's nothing to do with flavor, right? This is more aesthetics. It's what we're visually trying to achieve. We need to achieve it or want to achieve it. So, plating-wise, something that I used to do with my students, my chefs, all the time is we'd make a puree, and basically everybody would get parchment paper, or maybe you can buy some big rolls of paper, something that's inexpensive, and you line every table would have this paper down. And we'd get all types of apparatuses that we wanted to use. It could have been spoons, it could have been pastry brushes, it could have been squeeze bottles, anything you wanted. And we would make one simple puree. Okay? And 9 times out of 10, we have a lot of carrots, so we make carrot puree. And again, it wasn't about seasoning, it wasn't about flavor, so it's carrots and water. Okay? If you want to add a little ultra just so you have a really nice texture, great. The whole point is to understand hydration. Okay? When you're plating food, the amount of moisture in your sauce, the amount of liquid in your sauce, right? It really determines what is going to happen on the plate. Okay, if I have a home puree, right, a mashed potato, and I take that and I put it on the plate, it's not going anywhere. But if I take that same home puree and I add, 20-30% water, well, now I may have a sauce that I can, really put down in the center of the plate, smooth it out, put all my vegetables, and put my fish on top of that, right? Maybe I don't want mashed potatoes. Okay, so thinking about water and how chefs, we believe that the key to being a chef is mastering fire, right? Mastering heat. And for me, it's really mastering water, right? Mastering the hydration of anything and everything. Versatility goes back. If I give you, a carrot that's this big versus a carrot that's this big, your brain already tells you a lot of things about that carrot without eating it. And it's the same thing, right? Understanding that moisture content. Strawberries, right? I love strawberries. Go to Plant City every year, get some strawberries. I actually take them home and I'll throw them in my dehydrator for about an hour, right? Because you remove excess water and all that's left is intensified flavor, right? So just, kind of, I guess, marinate on the concept. So sauce-wise, again, I've done events from 15. I think the biggest event we've done is a 3,000 person sit-down. The approach is always the same. Okay, if I need 5 people on the line and one person at the end is the first person doing the sauce, like for 1,000, for 3,000, for 50, always the same format. So I try to figure out what is easy, right? What is simple? What is something that's replicatable? Again, more people, a little bit less complex, but still stunning, right? Still the ability. So if I'm doing, again, a very, very big event, we may do, just a very simple circle. And for me, it's one of my favorites. Not a plate, but just doing the circles. Again, if you can use your ability to see the ingredients on the plate, it's like, maybe your protein is here, and you have a vegetable here, and your sauce is being caught in this circle, right? Again, this is very simple, and from a creative standpoint, behind you are a bunch of people that want to be creative. This is the opportunity, right? Because there's no wrong, right? Using the circle, using the plate. Erik and I were talking about plates the other day. I'm like, oh, what kind of plates do you have? And he's like, oh, I got this and that. I'm like, you know what? It doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter. Because we'll figure it out. Now, it matters when you're in a service or a competition, but from a purely, creative standpoint, and again, I think that's versatility, right? You use something a little different, right? Plating on a cutting board became very popular, but I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Maybe the guy ran out of plates or something. Like, a cutting board, it could be interesting. Again, thinking about what you put on it. Another one that, I think is cool. I don't do it for very big groups. It's kind of the whole splash look. So what I do is I typically will put parchment down and we'll lay all our plates out. And again, the texture of your sauce is very important. But what you're trying to do is really not hit the plate, you're pumping it, just flicking your wrist. And you're allowing the sauce to kind of do its own movement. And again, each plate can be a little different. But I think that's the beauty of it, right? And you don't need much, Now, if I'm going for incredibly simple, then what's my food, right? This may be, a plate up that I do on a pork dish, right? And again, I'm using my sensory as to why I'm doing things. This may be a beef dish, hands down, right? Something really bold, drastic, or maybe if I'm doing a fish dish, I'm just literally just on the edge of my spoon and just pulling a straight line, great, little dot happen. Maybe I'm, putting a little bit more there. And then, again, building on top of that. And then, again, I have another sauce. So You know, do I want to put this really hot sauce directly on my protein? No, because you know I probably have a sauce anyway. But I also don't want to overpower it. You know, so now since I've done something a little bit drastic here, you know, maybe I just need to be, you know, very simple with it. This one here, you know, maybe I just want a little bit in one spot, right? So as they eat, they kind of go back to it. You know, obviously with the hot sauce, I probably wouldn't do it on a fish dish. You know, but just, you know, dropping one line on it. Again, it takes a lot of practice just sitting there and playing around with these sauces, and it's fun. I mean, I used to do it with my team every once in a while because we get new people and they're like, Chef, can you do the sauces? Yes, sure. You know, if this stuff excites you, like I love abstract stuff, you know, look up Michel Bras. You know, for me, he's like the king of abstract. He's got a really, really cool video on one of his famous dishes, the gargouille, and he's got probably 85 components on it. You know, 7 different colored sauces, all different things, and you know, if that's what you like I recommend checking it out. So, I just wanted to show you this just to kind of, you know, maybe give you another activity that you can do with your students in terms of, you know, this is getting creative, right? So if you can make the sauce, you can execute the sauce. Now it's like, okay, how can I eat it? The versatility is making the sauce. The creative side is kind of getting to this point. And then thinking about it, right? If this sauce is hot, or if this sauce is cold, or if this sauce is hot, like, what's the right application for it? You know, I could easily now on this fish dish go with a beautiful pesto, dropping it brown. Now you have the oil and the herbs kind of separating, and it's soup. It's really beautiful. So if I'm doing a fish course, not an entree, again, I don't need a lot of vegetables. So a beautiful little, you know, root vegetable, I don't know, some kind of a daikon or a jicama or beautiful slaw that I put down, and my piece of fish, and now I've got this little, you know, simple, maybe it's a cilantro pesto. You know, and I'm using pesto to give you a visual of what I'm talking about. But what I mean is, you know, acid, fat, you know, the cilantro, maybe there's pumpkin seeds in there, maybe a little bit of, you know, finely minced, you know, red pepper, right? And that's it, just mix it, and you drop it down. You want it to be broken, you want it to separate, okay? All right. Anybody have any questions so far? So for this cut of beef, I actually took the same cut and cooked it sous vide. Okay. Again, trying to think about, okay, I can braise something, make it shred it, it looks great. But you know, can I cook that piece of meat for long enough and make it look like a steak cut? It's a steak knife, right? But the application is there, right? I think that when a client sees it, they may notice it as something more than what it was, right? Not to fool them, but more to give them a little bit more of a heightened experience. So, real simple. I seasoned the beef, 1% salt, 1% spice, seared it, and then I added a little bit of my paste. So the ancho paste that's in the, I believe you guys got the recipe. If not, I'll get them to Erik. We'll send them to you in the bag. And that was it. 48 hours at 140 Fahrenheit or 60 Celsius. I've done 72. I've done 26. I've done so many. 48 really works well. Set up a circulator, make sure that it's running every day. And it really turns out a really nice sliceable product. The thing about sous vide, that again, it goes back to what is your application, what do you want, what is your final outcome. So.
What cut was that? What cut was that?
So this is the same cut. That same sirloin steak we're talking about you get at Publix. It's the same cut. The only difference is I actually broke it apart at the seams. So I had steak-like items so that when I go to the final, I can actually slice some medallions out of it. So it's great. And again, this is, it's not cooking on a budget because it takes a lot of work. But it really is because it's not strip loin, it's not tenderloin, it's not the fancier cuts that cost an incredible amount of money. All right. So, for this dish, I've added a few components. You know, one thing is asparagus. Again, it's super simple. You know, all we did was kind of cook them over an open fire. This could easily be a grill. You know, or just torching them a little bit. I didn't blanch them. So as soon as I took them off the grill, I cooled them right away. And what it does is it really keeps a really nice green color. You know, for me, pencil asparagus, you can eat raw if you wanted to. So they don't need much. So again, if I'm in a competition and I'm you know, time is of the essence, you know, I try to find, you know, simple things that I can do to an ingredient or a product that cut away from me having to get a pot, add the water, have an ice bath, right? All these things that you don't have time for anymore. So we've got asparagus, we've got these guys, which again, this is just trying to think, how can I put more peppers on the plate, more chilies on the plate? These are the little sweet yum yum peppers. And we've stuffed them with a little black bean, tortilla cheese, some cilantro, some tomato, and a little bit of the onion. And then a Modelo tempura. Okay. Again, you know, going back to, you know, adding more elements to the plate that really speak more into like the Mexican style cuisine, or the chili dynamic, right? So our sauce. Also, the plate indicates how I should plate something. You know, I am a fan of rimless plates. Just gives me more abilities, but it doesn't mean you can't. I've gone over the rim. I was at a wedding and I told them, I said, I don't want rimless plates. They're like, well, the bride wants gold rim plates. I'm like, okay. You know, there you go. They love it. But still, it's like, sometimes you want to do something, and I'll take the consequences. So this kind of a plate here, you know, I really like kind of going in that circle. And again, it doesn't have to be much. Whereas a plate like this that, you know, really doesn't have a rim, you know, we can use the kind of splash style plate. So to my asparagus, I'm adding a little bit of my onions, the cilantro, the cumin, and then a touch of cilantro, and then some olive oil. So, you know, again, catering, you know, even on the line, keeping things hot is really challenging. So it's always hot here. So something that is actually room temper cold is always going to be a little bit more beneficial. So this is one of my components that's going to be cold, where this is going to be hot, this is going to be hot, hot, cold. You know, so trying to break it up. So I don't need a ton of chafers set up in order to execute this plate. So if I wanted to go back and sear this, I could. I don't think it necessarily needs it. You'll see. I mean, this cooked for 48 hours. It looks like a steak. You know, and it'll eat very steak-like. If you want to go a little bit longer, what happens is that you don't lose the color, but it becomes softer. And that's what we found is that, you know, certain cuts, because they have more fat in them, the longer you cook them, they break down even further. Right, so it becomes more of a braise, even though it's bright red. It's like it ends up looking like pastrami beef or something, right? So, being that it's an entree, kind of going a little bit heavier on the portioning. Again, I need to figure out, okay, I don't want to cover up everything I just did to plate. So I need to make sure that it makes sense for what I'm doing. And what is my 12 o'clock? What is my 6 o'clock? I love plating things and not having any, they're all 12, they're all 6. If you do a really cool salad, you got all these different things, and everything kind of propped up, and you turn the plate, it really is everything's beautiful, right? It's not one side. It makes it so much easier when you're doing thousands of people. You can imagine, like, picking up from here, you got 100 servers. Good luck, you know. All right. So we've got our asparagus. Again, I'm trying to stay close to my garnishes so I don't lose sight of the actual dish. Then just a little bit of crema. So if you've got, a really nice thick consistency with ultra spurs, you can make purees that are as thick as sour cream. Okay. A lot of people, when they make a carrot puree or a turnip puree or sunchoke puree, they're like, oh no, don't throw all the liquid in there. Right? Throw in all the solids, puree, and add liquid as you need it. And, well, all the flavors of liquid. So in this case, everything goes in, right? We don't throw anything away, right? Because everything you throw away that was cooking liquid is salt, fat, and flavor. It has a value to it. You don't necessarily perceive it right away because it's like, oh, whatever. So everything goes in there. You use ultra first, you get a really beautiful texture. So I can, take this guy, make these really nice dollops. And what I'm doing is I'm working this puree, the sauce, until I get a smooth surface to then come down and just gently pull up. Now, if I want to take this, right, and make a cannelle with it, same thing, smooth surface, and you just got to gently do it, pull it up. Okay, again, this was like the next class, it's like everybody wants to do the cannelle because chef had to be the only one doing them that night, but there's, it gives it a little something. You can chop a carrot, you can 28 carrot, you know what I mean? It's like, it's carrot, it's cooked properly, right? But the 28 shows something, it gives a level of, you elevate it to another level, right? So I think when we work with things that are incredibly simple, it's important to find a way to elevate it with our abilities, right? With our craft. And then some, just very simply, some cilantro, kind of. Now, our sauce. So if we were on site, this sauce would have all gone into a pot because this is all flavor. So I don't know, half hour before service, right before the first plates are walking, we're pulling beef out of the bath, we're getting beef out of the bags. All that sauce is getting put back into a pot. Just bring it up to a boil, check the seasoning, right? That's ready to go. We're happy with that. And then the beef, we were slicing beef probably, again, if we're doing 100 people, we're probably slicing beef 3 to 5 minutes before serving. Because as you see, the bright red color starts to die out, right? It's just oxidation getting to it. So keeping that in mind, and putting our sauce on it, again, I tend to like, beef at the 3 o'clock for this particular presentation. So we'll do one more on this last page. maybe we want a little bit more of a, I guess a medallion style look to our beef, right? Now, this is just cilantro dehydrated, and you know, you can easily put this into a piece of cheesecloth, and you know, honestly, just dusting a little bit of cilantro as it hits the black sauce. You know, again, how far do you want to take it? How many components do you want to add? We can stop anywhere. All these things that I'm now adding are not necessarily extra ingredients, right? Because all these flavor profiles are in the dish. I mean, we could make one dish using nothing but tomatoes, and we could have 9 components. It is very much possible, and that's where the versatility comes. So instead of putting the cilantro on the plate, I've done it a little bit more in an artistic format where it's just a powder. So those are the dishes. Does anybody have any questions?
Carlos, you have a bottle of the charcoal powder?
Not with me, but it's honestly, the charcoal powder is on Amazon. Yeah, just make sure you buy a food grade one. The one thing I will say is a little goes a long way. And be mindful because the more you add, so this didn't happen to me,